we're going to dive into a really fascinating idea that gets right to the heart of our romantic lives. It's called the 5 love styles. We're going to look at how the echoes of our childhood can literally define the relationships we build as adults. Okay, so first things first. Let's talk about a feeling that I think pretty much all of us can relate to, that feeling of being stuck in a familiar and, let's be honest, sometimes frustrating relationship pattern. You ever been there? Maybe you find yourself dating the same type of person again and again, or the same arguments just keep popping up no matter who you're with. It's a super common experience, and it turns out there's a real reason for it. Yeah, see? These patterns aren't just random. They're basically behavioral blueprints that were formed when we were really young. They shape everything about how we express ourselves and how we react in our closest relationships. And this brings us right to the core theory behind all of this. The idea that our upbringing doesn't just, influence us, it actually provides a direct blueprint for how we love. So, marriage and family counselors, doctors Milan and Kay Yerkovich, they have a name for this. They call it your love style. It's basically your unique set of tendencies, your go-to inclinations for how you respond to romantic partners. And it's all based on what you learned growing up. And figuring out your style, well, that's the first big step to really understanding your relationships. So you ready? Let's break down the 5 distinct love styles that they identified. And as we go through them, just kind of see if one of them really clicks, if it resonates with you. All right, first up, we have the love style known as the pleaser. And you can see the direct link here, right? A pleaser's childhood often meant walking on eggshells around a parent who was maybe critical or angry or even overly protective. So they learned not to receive comfort, but to give it, just to keep the peace. And in adulthood, that translates into avoiding conflict at all costs. I mean, these are literally the survival skills they had to develop. Pleasers become experts at reading other people's moods. But because their focus is always on everyone else, they really struggle with healthy boundaries. They can get so stressed from trying to be everything to everyone that eventually they might just break down or even run from a relationship. Now, our second style builds on this whole idea of childhood survival. This one is the victim. The victim's blueprint, it was drawn up in a really chaotic home. To get by, they learned to make themselves small, to be quiet and stay under the radars so they wouldn't get attention from parents who might be angry or even violent. This learned compliance, it carries directly into their adult relationships, and it's usually paired with some pretty deep-seated low self-esteem. And what's really fascinating here is that chaos can actually start to feel normal. Victims get so used to stress that a calm, peaceful moment can bring on anxiety because they're just waiting for the next explosion. To cope, they often built these rich imaginary worlds as kids, and as adults, they might unconsciously find themselves with controlling partners who just recreate that chaos. Which, of course, brings us very logically to our third style, the controller. So the controller grew up in a home where they felt unprotected. So they figured out pretty quick they had to take care of themselves. And listen, control isn't about power just for the sake of power. It's a defense mechanism. It's all about making sure they never again have to feel that fear or helplessness or humiliation they felt as a kid. So how do they maintain that control? Well, a lot of the time, they use anger as a tool. You see, they don't see anger as a weakness, not like fear or sadness. So to avoid feeling weak or unprotected, they stick to what they know. They solve problems their own way, and they absolutely hate anything that pushes them out of their comfort zone. Okay, our fourth style is defined by one word: inconsistency. This is the vacillator. The vacillator's parent was unpredictable with their love and affection. This created a really deep fear of abandonment and a lifelong search for that consistent love they never got. So as adults, they just throw themselves into relationships, totally idealizing their new partner. But, and this is key, the second they feel let down, that perfect image shatters, and they swing hard into disappointment and doubt. And this, as you can imagine, creates a ton of internal conflict. Vacillators are incredibly perceptive. Like, they can sense the tiniest shift in a partner's mood, which immediately triggers that fear of being abandoned. It leads to this constant feeling of being misunderstood, when really all they're trying to do is find the steady love they missed out on. And finally, that brings us to our fifth love style, the avoider. Now, the avoider's childhood home wasn't necessarily chaotic or critical, but it was often pretty low on affection and really high on valuing independence. So they learned from a very young age to just take care of themselves and handle their own stuff. As adults, this means they really value their space and they rely on logic, not emotion. Because they learn to just put their own feelings on hold, they get really uncomfortable with big emotional displays from other people. They are self-reliant almost to a fault. So when things get anxious or emotional, they don't lean in, they detach and turn to logic. It's the coping mechanism they have always known. Okay, I know hearing all this might feel a little heavy, but here's the most important part of this whole thing. Identifying your style is not a life sentence. It's a starting point. You can actually redraw the blueprint. And this slide right here, this is the key. For every single style, there's a path forward. The pleaser needs to start being honest about what they are feeling. The victim has to learn self-love and how to stand up for themselves. The controller's work is to practice letting go. The facilitator needs to learn to manage their expectations, and the avoider has to learn how to open up. You see, each path directly counters the core wound from their childhood. So, I want you to remember this. Your love style is a part of your story, but it absolutely does not have to be the end of the story. Understanding the why behind your patterns is what gives you the power to change them. So the only real question left is, how are you going to write your next chapter?